Hi everyone, welcome back to Simply Francesca Day. If you're new here, our life is a bit crowded. We have 6, soon to be 7 kids. We live in a small 800 square foot cozy little home. We talk a lot about the now, homeschooling, cooking for a large family, and the heart of our home. Lately I've been thinking back to the first time I actually had to surrender to God's will for our family. And that was all the way back at the birth of my first daughter. It didn't start with a perfectly planned birth or a nursery and a beautiful new home. It all started with a lesson that I wasn't quite ready to learn. I've been a mom now for 10 years. I still remember the birth of Vera like it was yesterday. I always imagined birth to be very specific. Dim lights, slow movement, the birth pool, slowly just waving through contractions, and that's not how her birth went at all. Because I had Placenta Previa with Vera. The only safe path for her was an operating room and a surgical table. This is a story where I learned that surrender is just as powerful as effort, and Vera made her entrance in the most unexpected way. My journey to this birth started at my 14-week ultrasound. At this ultrasound, I learned that my placenta was low-lying, but they told me that it wasn't anything to really worry about because I didn't fall under any of the risk factors. And also, it's only about 0.5% to 1% that actually end in placenta previa. 90% of previa actually resolves on its own when it's found early on in pregnancy. They told me at this time that it really wasn't anything to worry about, and so I was able to trek through my pregnancy without too much hesitation. I also had no other indication of previa. I had no bleeding, no pain, and so they just let me continue on without any restrictions or bed rest or anything like that. Moving forward to about my 20-week ultrasound, there wasn't a whole lot of hope that it was going to move up, but they continued to reassure me that there was the slightest bit of movement. I think it was about 1/4 of an inch is what they had told me at the time. So at this point, it wasn't completely covering my cervix. It was just low lying, but there was enough room that they felt pretty confident that things were probably going to go in my favor. So we scheduled an appointment for my 36-week ultrasound just to make sure that everything moved up and that we were all going to be in the clear for a normal vaginal delivery. At my 36-week ultrasound, I actually got to learn that she was a girl. Prior to this, they could not get any good images of her. She was always covered or laying in a weird position, so this whole time I didn't know she was actually a girl. But finally at my 36-week ultrasound, the first thing they told me is that it was a girl, and I was so excited, but it quickly turned kind of sour because they said, unfortunately, you have placenta previa. The cervix is completely covered at this point, and we can no longer move forward with a vaginal delivery. We're going to send the surgeon in, and you're going to talk to her about your plans going forward. I had remained hopeful up until this point because they really reassured me multiple times that things would probably move forward. Everything was going to move up, and I was going to be able to have just a normal delivery. So there was a lot of fear and grieving at this time. I didn't have a whole lot of time to really process any of it because that was at 36 weeks, and just at 37 weeks and 6 days is when she finally had to come. I had just about a week and a half to really mentally prepare myself for the surgery. I wonder sometimes if it would have been easier had I not had all that time to think about it, but I do know that there's trauma in having an emergency C-section, so I guess maybe it was better this way that I ended up finding out early and I was able to process and really think about it. But it's one of those thoughts that I have, would it have been easier on me had I not known? Because I was pretty paralyzed from that point on. But in that time, a lot of reflection, I was able to really reflect on the fact that being a strong mother didn't mean having the perfect birth. It meant just bringing your baby into this world safely. The day before my C-section, I had a sit-down conversation with the surgeon. I wanted to give birth on September 8th because I wanted her to be born on the same day as Our Lady. The surgeon was actually going to be out of town that day, so they really didn't give me much option. They told me that she was going to have to be delivered the following day on September 7th. And so they handed me some surgical soap and told me basically, make sure you wash, get all clean, take a shower before you come in tomorrow, don't eat after midnight, and we'll see you at 10 a.m. Planning throughout the night and thinking about it over and over was a big surrendering in God's will for me. I had to put all my desires and wants aside. I had to really contemplate and think and just playing through the birth and not get overly obsessive over it. I was able to sleep that night, and when we woke up the next morning, I think the excitement and the adrenaline kept us going. It meant we got to hold our baby in just a few hours. We got to know the time that she was going to arrive. We didn't have to wonder, how many more days we were going to be pregnant. We knew it was going to be over that day. So we did find some comfort in that, but it was difficult to surrender at the time to God's will. I was very excited to meet the baby, but I did feel trapped in the fact that I didn't get to make the decision. And I think that was a really big lesson for me, because I tend to be somebody who likes to take control. And God told me from that point on, He has control of my life. He has control of the decisions. And ultimately, He was asking me to surrender. We woke up that following morning with one goal in mind, and that was just to hold our baby girl. That was the one thing that kept me going. We walked into the hospital, got signed in. They took us to a triage room, which felt like an eternity. They had a team come in and they explained the surgery to me. They had all the IVs placed. I needed an extra IV in case I needed additional blood or fluids. It was around noon when they started wheeling me to the OR. I entered the operating room, and I remember having to lean over, and they placed the spinal block in, which wasn't as bad as I thought. I was kind of anticipating it being pretty bad, but it really wasn't anything scary. At this time, I think a lot of people who've had a C-section know that they don't let your husband into the operating room until they start the surgery. So he was waiting in another room, putting on his bunny suit, as they like to call it. And at the time, I just laid there and waited. They strapped my arms down. I got the spinal block, and I just remember looking up at the bright lights. There was a whole team of people there. My anesthesiologist was amazing. She was super friendly. She kept me calm, but that's probably the only good thing about that moment was my anesthesiologist. She was super nice. I slowly felt my body go numb, and shortly after, the surgeon walked in. They started the surgery, and I think at this point they let my husband in, so he was over by my left side at this point, and I started to feel some stinging and some pain, some tugging and some pulling, and it got increasingly worse and worse. It got really bad. It got to a point where I actually looked over at my anesthesiologist and I told them that I definitely felt what was going on, and they tried to reassure me that it was just normal tugging and pulling, and it was probably just normal sensations that everybody feels during a C-section. But as a redhead, I knew that something was wrong. I was either slowly coming off of the medication, or the medication wasn't quite enough for me. So at that point, I started begging them for relief because it was getting pretty bad. I think they did finally believe me, and she was able to give me a little bit of extra medication, which did the trick. Reflecting on being strapped reminds me of some other Catholic woman had said about the fact that my arms were outstretched and my body was given up for my baby so that I can unite my sufferings with Christ's sufferings on the cross, because I think that would have given me a little bit of peace. But at this time, they finally administered more medication, and I was able to finish the surgery without much more hiccups. But I do remember not being able to see much, just the bright lights, the blue cloth in front of me. They offered to do the clear one so I could see the baby after they pulled her out, but I was not prepared to see anything, so I denied that. And just a short while later, I heard the big pop, and the baby was born. She immediately screamed. She was loud and powerful, and my husband and I looked at each other and we smiled, but it wasn't over for me yet. And Vera had fluid in her lungs, so they whisked her to the warming tables, tried to suction her up a couple times, and then they told me that she had to be taken into the NICU at this point because she needed observation for the next 4 hours. At that moment, my husband and I had to make a decision. It was he either stayed with me or he ran off with the baby to the NICU, and we decided at that moment that she probably needed him more than I did. So he followed the NICU team, and I laid on the operating table alone. I had wonderful staff, a wonderful team. They were super friendly. They helped me through the whole thing. They got me all sewn up and set up and got me straight into the recovery room. I think in total the surgery was about 30 minutes. It was 12:34, so 1, 2, 3, 4, when she officially was born. She weighed 5 pounds, 15 ounces, and was about 18 and a half inches long. She was tiny, but she was very mighty. And at 37 weeks and 6 days, I think that's pretty good. They did stop and let me kiss the baby before, so they gave me a quick peek of Vera, and then they told me to give her a quick kiss, and that's when they whisked her away. After all of that, I ended up sitting in a recovery room alone. Well, if you could call it a recovery room. I remember looking to my left, and there was just a nurse typing away on a computer. So it was almost like a records room or a staff office room or something. It was very tiny. All I could see was just a clock right in front of me. And so for 4 hours, I watched that clock just tick away. I had two of my sisters and my mom come visit me for a short 5 minutes, and then they went off to go meet the baby. And then while they were meeting the baby, my husband came in to tell me that her glucose was low and that they wanted to give her some formula to try to keep her blood sugar levels up, which together we decided that was probably best since I still had a couple more hours of recovery and I wasn't totally sure what all the ins and outs were at the time. I wish I had done more research before then, or maybe it was the right thing to do, I don't know. The 4 hours had finally been up, and at this point it was time for me to meet the baby. So they wheeled me into the room, and shortly after she came wheeled in too, in a little tiny bed, and she was perfect. She had the cutest little face and the tiniest toes, and I remember just loving on her. Our road to recovery was long. And we learned a lot in those four walls. I learned how to breastfeed. I learned how to survive long hours without sleep. And I learned what love really was. The C-section was pretty traumatic, and I had to learn how to get through that and process that. But I think God's ultimate lesson in all of this was that I needed to surrender to His will so that someday I would be prepared to have soon to be 7 kids. That night, I remember the nurses telling me, like, don't forget, you should call us in the second you feel any twinge or pain or anything. If you don't call on time, your medication won't get to you in time and you're gonna notice and feel the pain of the C-section. I held out just a little too long, and I remember everything. I remember every tug, every stretch. It was so painful at this point. And so I quickly called the nurse and I'm like, please just get me anything. And it was gonna be a 45-minute wait. So I had to surrender again to God's will and offer up those sufferings of just feeling everything, like every single ache and pain and tug. This was one of those moments where I realized I was no longer whole, that there was actually a part of me that was broken. And I say broken because, I don't know, that's just how I felt at the time. I had horrible thoughts of feeling less or that I didn't birth my baby in the correct way. But my scar isn't a sign of failure. It's a doorway through which my daughter was able to come into this world. So it was a good thing. God had divinely written this plan just for me. It took courage and strength and everything out of me that day. But it was the exact lesson I needed to learn to someday steward 7 kids. I needed this lesson to prepare me for all the ups and the downs of stewarding and housing 7 children, of feeding them and going through the motions of having a home and not having a home, living in a trailer, selling a home, going through an ectopic, and all the other things that I was going to go through someday. As I sit in this 800 square foot house with 6, soon to be 7 children, I can go back and reflect on that and think about the plan that God wrote for me specifically and truly understand what He was strengthening me for. The C-section was scary then. Today that I see that it was the first lesson in surrender that prepared me for the next decade of motherhood.